Good morning, everybody. I'm Will Grosskopf, Associate Pastor here at Journey Church, and with me is my fellow elder and fellow life group leader,
Right.
Brent Williams.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. We're excited to have you tuning in with us today because we've got some really cool things going on here. We're right in the middle of a series called Celebration of Discipline. And it's been great, man. It's been
Excellent series. And as we've been journeying through this, we went through several different disciplines that the Bible actually does cover.
Yeah.
This week, we're actually going to be on the discipline of service. So I'm so excited to be able to get this going. And we invite you to actually join us here on site at 425 Millbrook Drive. You know, instead of just doing this all through the internet or through Facebook and stuff, to be here physical is going to be a huge deal. So if you join us 10 o'clock Sunday mornings right here, 425 Millbrook Drive, and we thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Journey Church. Our church exists to help people find God, experience freedom, discover their purpose, and make a difference. If you have any questions about Journey Church, please visit us at ourjourney.tv.
And now, here's Pastor Will Grosskopf.
Now, today I'm going to be talking about the discipline of service, which is kind of weird because to me, discipline and service don't go hand in hand. It's like two different things. They don't go together at all to me. I mean, because really what you're saying is I need to discipline myself to serve somebody else. Okay, that's kind of weird. But, you know, really what it's saying is, you know, the Bible doesn't just suggest that we do that. It's actually implied through a lot of scriptures. And a lot of these scriptures are actually commands. Now, there's going to be a lot of scriptures here that we're going to go through today, but I'm not going to go through everything. All these scriptures actually say that. So just know this, every one of them do imply to that, and I'll tell you why. So we're going to start with the discipline of servitude is where we're at. Servitude, man, is just amazing. That's one thing that really speaks to my heart. That's one thing I've been doing for a long time. I really think that there's a point when we get saved and a point when we get baptized, and there's another point. It's called becoming good and saved. Now, good and saved is when you recognize your place in the body and you want to go ahead and live up to it. You start serving. And I was saved for a while, but it took me a while to get good and saved. But now I've been good and saved, I can't do without church. I can't do without Christ's body. I can't do without the brothers and sisters in my life. I know that I've got a part to play, and I'm going to make sure I pull it off. So, Mark 12:30 and 31 says this. And, of course, when I do these slides right here, they're just going to have the scriptures. I encourage you to actually look them up yourself. That's what these Bibles are for. That's what smartphones, iPads. Right now I'm using an iPad, but you can use your smartphone, whatever you want. But I encourage you to read them for yourself because everybody's got a different version. And whatever version you got, it's good. Whatever version. Whatever you can read that actually reads to you in a way that you can understand, it's a good version. All right? So my version says this. Love the Lord with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and strength. And equally important, to love your neighbor as yourself. Now, if you look at that, where is discipline and service in that scripture? Well, it's very simple. I think it's this. Love doesn't come naturally. It doesn't come easily. It's actually learned through experience and practice. Experience and practice is what discipline is. That's action. And the act of discipline to do what isn't natural will make it something a part of you. Nobody woke up all of a sudden when they was a baby and said, I'm going to learn to make my bed. They had to be taught. Then you disciplined yourself to make your bed after that so that you kept a well-made bed. Now, if you're like me, I use the entire bed. So I want the whole bed to just be one big lump in the middle. That's how I sleep. My wife cannot fathom how I could destroy a bed the way I do. But I sleep with reckless intent. I'm just like, I'm all in or not. You know what I'm saying? So you ever have them expressions where you wake up and your whole body hurts and you're like, what happened? Well, maybe I slept wrong. How in the world can you sleep wrong? I sleep wrong all the time. All the time. I can't get it right. So anyway, but to discipline yourself to serve others is actually learning how to interact with God when you discipline yourself to serve with others. Because love is an action word, and we know that action words actually are things that motivate us to do things. Now, anybody here ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages? 5 Love Languages. If you look at all those are actually service. When you give quality time, you're serving someone. When you give gifts, you're serving someone. When you give words of affirmation, you're serving someone. When you give physical touch, you're serving someone. And of course, act of service is a no-brainer. It's a service, right? Those are the 5 love languages. Therefore, if we're to love one another, we must serve one another. That's all it is. I can't possibly say I love you if I haven't served you. Simple as that. Christ lived in constant service to others. That's why he lived. All his years on earth, every single moment was serving someone. He set his life as an example for all of us to follow. And as Christians, we must live up to that very definition. The word Christian means to be Christ-like. If he was a servant, we must be a servant. If he is a leader, we must be a leader, right? So Matthew 20:28 puts it very plain and simple. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. If we're going to be Christ-like, we got to remember it's not our job to be served. It's our job to be a servant. Jesus proved that the cross was a sign of submission, but the sign of service, Jesus used a towel. A towel. In the book of Luke, the disciples were arguing amongst them over who of them is the greatest. This is in Luke 9:46, if you ever get a chance to read it. But I love how this book that we're reading, this book, the celebration of discipline, which to me makes no sense. Who celebrates discipline? Nobody. It'd be like, hey, I'm going to go get my own switch. Or, hey, why don't you use this belt? I like this one better. That's the way I view discipline, but really, we need to celebrate this because all discipline that's done in love is for our betterment. And if it's causing us to grow, and it's causing us to grow in a way that makes us better for someone else, why not celebrate it? If it's causing us to grow in a way that leads somebody else to want to grow in that way, celebrate it. So, but I like down this book, it says, whenever there's a struggle over who is the greatest, there's also a struggle over who's going to be the least. And that's so true. Because most of us in this room have already come to terms with we'll never be the greatest. But none of us are fighting over who's going to be the least. None of us. So we know what happens later on with the disciples and Jesus. Jesus, just while they're all just in there yapping, he grabs a towel and some water and he proceeds to wash their feet. Now in John 13:14 and 15, it says this, since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, now you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. That's what Jesus did. He washed all their feet. And then when it's done, he passes the towel on in the water and says, hey, now it's your turn. Now, washing feet was a nasty job. No, it just was. Washing feet's a nasty job. It's nasty. Nasty, stinky, dirty feet you're messing with. What if they got bunions, corns, athlete's feet? What if there's toe fungus? Nobody wants to touch that, right? But we're talking about in the old days, they didn't even have, tennis shoes and stuff. So it's dirty, gritty sand, maybe some camel poop. We don't know. But I'm going to tell you, it's the lowest of jobs is to wash somebody's feet. Most people, they might even be like, hey, God, you know what? I'll do whatever you want. But not that one. I'm not going to wash feet. You know what I'm saying? There's a great theologian that was in my time. Some of you can relate to it. He says, you know what? I would do anything for love, but I won't do that. I won't do that. That's how a lot of us look at washing feet. A lot of us look at it like that because it is a dirty and nasty job. But what Jesus is saying is it doesn't matter what the job is. It's the heart that's tied to the service is all that matters. Frank says it all the time, and this ain't in my notes, I'm just throwing it out there. Frank says it all the time. Nobody really appreciates a plumber, but everybody needs one. And the only time you're ever praised as a plumber is when the job is done and you get to leave and your bill was not too big. Other than that, nobody likes a plumber. They think of us as dirty and stinky people, but I'm like, you know what? We all have to use that toilet. So, thank you. Discipline and service, we must learn to experience these little deaths to our ego and pride. That's what service is. Service to others will often take us to a place of the mundane and sometimes ordinary and sometimes trivial, just like serving with plumbing. A lot of people look at it as very menial, very low. It's not. It's actually a very experienced job. It's a skilled trade. It's a lot of things that nobody wants to do. But I'm going to tell you, it's actually a lot of art. When you're having to put together a set of plumbing pipes, it's a literal puzzle that you got in your head. There ain't no drawing for that. They're not teaching you in a book. It takes some real skill. So honor those people that come and do your trades. They're a dying breed in this world. Discipline of service removes the pecking order amongst Christians, which is good because we're not chickens, right? But the good thing about chickens is they do have a pecking order, and they demonstrate it. They demonstrate it quickly. And what that does, it shows domineering control into submission. But we're not to be like that. When we're trying to establish how we lead and how we serve, we don't do it by establishing dominance. Crazy thing is, especially in the world we live today, and even in America, America is really, the lead in this. We are actually the society that lacks loyalty, respect, and honor. We do. We lead the world in that lack of respect. When I was growing up, I lived 2.5 years in Japan, in Misawa, Japan. I loved it, man. In Japanese culture, they are high, really high, one of the top nations when they teach loyalty and respect. They engage in that actively and every day. What's crazy is they raise their children that way. So when they raise the children, they're taking care of their children, but they're raising their children to serve. The whole time I was there, I never seen a child one act up in public. Not one. And they was all humble. Now, I know they didn't beat them kids into submission. They just made it a lifestyle, and the kids just done it because everybody else was doing it. Now, what I really liked about that is when them kids reached that adult age, when they reached that 18, 19 years old, they stopped being served and they started serving. So we'd have a group meeting, have like 20 or 30 people in there. Whoever the youngest adult of that room was, that was the one that served. And they did that without even having to ask. Nobody had to tell them. They did it honorably, loyally. They did it faithfully. What I liked about that too is they also knew the next person to come that was younger automatically replaced them. They got to take a seat of honor next. And they did that because they knew that no matter what, one day they'll be the one that needed to be served. So they served constantly. We don't do that. But they're taught that from birth, and that's something we lack as discipline. There's 2 common forms of service that we see regularly. I like how this is pointed out in this book too as well. The 2 common forms will be self-righteous service and true service. And as I was reading this, I'm going to tell you, I was guilty of both of them. There's sometimes I get stuck in the habits of true service, but a lot of times when this book opened my eyes, I found out I was doing a lot of self-righteous service. And it's sad, but I want to tell you, we're all guilty of it. And I'm not going to point fingers at all y'all because I already got them first. But I'm going to tell you, we are guilty of this. True service finds it almost impossible to distinguish the small from the large service. It doesn't matter, big or small. If it's just sweeping or if it's out there on a megaphone on a street being seen, it doesn't matter. Service is service. True service doesn't care. A true servant indiscriminately welcomes all opportunities to serve. Here at Journey Church, we get to witness that a lot. We get to see people all the time that want to just volunteer and serve. They don't care. They don't care what the job is or anything like that. And I can tell you, I know these people never ask for applause. They don't even care to be seen. But I'll tell you, the McDonald's, they serve wholeheartedly. The McVeys, they serve wholeheartedly. I see them answer the call before anybody even asks. I see them serve without anybody having to raise a hand saying we need. And I'm telling you, there's very few people in this world that you guys say, hey, don't serve to, because they're willing to go ahead and do it. We need to be really following some examples like that. It's not saying that we could say yes to everything, but man, if you're willing and able to do it, do it. Don't even think twice. Don't think twice. Like I said, they're the best servants I've ever seen, and they serve absolutely selflessly. They serve without recognition and even the thought of recognition. True service is content without being seen. That's what true service is. I know a lot of times the behind-the-scenes stuff is the most important stuff. Sunday mornings happens because of everybody that's working behind the scene. It has nothing to do with the pastor. It has nothing to do with the praise team. There's so much work that even goes before that people don't even see. Every Sunday morning is a team effort, and it takes everybody. Everybody. Nobody is too small. So although they don't run from the recognition, they don't chase it either. Hello? True service ministers simply and faithfully because there is a need. I've seen that so many times. You know, a lot of people are like, man, you know, I don't feel called to do that, but I'm going to do it until somebody else does. Hey, that's filling a need. And they do it faithfully, and they do it with excellence, even though they're not called to do it. But the minute somebody steps up, they're ready to go ahead and say, hey, here you go and take it. This is what I've done so far. You can build from there. It's awesome. True service simply delights in just the service, and it can serve anyone freely. That's true service. Now we're going to flip over to self-righteous service. Self-righteous service is impressed with the big deal. I've been impressed with the big deal quite a bit. Big events, I was like, yeah, I'm all in. Scrubbing toilets? No. But I'll tell you, the scrubbing toilets make a difference in every event. It's God's throne. Why not treat it like it? That's the way I see it. Self-righteous service is highly concerned with the results and is often only in it for the rewards. That's the bad thing about it. I've done a lot of stuff like that. What's in it for me? I don't want to be guilty of that no more. Often we only see service like that happen because we want to see something reciprocated. If I do this for them, what will they do for me? If I help them with this, I can get them to help me. That shouldn't be like that. That's not true service. That is self-righteous service. This servant will become bitter if the results fail to meet expectations. You ever been there? I have. I showed up to help people move, and I've been completely disappointed when I showed up and there wasn't a single box packed. And I did not know that moving meant packing and moving and unpacking and setting up. My heart was wrong. Because no matter what, if they said, hey, come help, it doesn't matter what the rest of the line is. If it was my heart tied to help, or is my heart tied to a condition? That was a hard one for me to swallow. I don't even want to read the rest of this book now. But I'm going to tell you. That's the thing. I mean, that's the way God's word is. It should reveal things about us, not things about them. You know what I'm saying? That's not even my notes. I'm trying to help my wife out here, let her know I'm trying, baby. I'm trying. However, Christians who do not discipline themselves to serve will always use lane turns like these. I serve because I was moved by the Spirit. Oh, wait a minute, before I serve, let me pray about that. That's the sad thing. I've been in those shoes quite a bit. The real thing is either you will serve or you won't. Either you can or you can't. Just be honest. If you're honest with yourself, it makes it easier to be honest with others. If you just can't, no is a great option. Say no. Don't leave somebody hanging. The discipline of service will bring humility to life. There's another great book out there, and this is crazy because I'm reading both of them basically simultaneously. This book I got called Discipline Equals Freedom. It's by Jocko Willink. I really like him a lot. He's a former SEAL Team 3 leader. Amazing guy, man. I really like his stuff. But I found this quote that definitely applies here. He says, discipline is the root of all good qualities. And it is. It's the one thing. If without discipline, we will never excel in anything. Nothing. All your greatest athletes, if it wasn't for discipline, they would not be great athletes. All your greatest speakers, the same way. Your greatest preachers, the same way. Everything you can put great on, if there's no discipline tied to it, they are not great. They just got lucky with something. And there's no luck, so really they ain't lucky. How about that? Discipline of service removes the hesitancy to serve. We've all heard it said, and even said it ourselves, I'll go do that for them, but then they'll take advantage of me. Or they'll walk all over me. The problem is if we believe that, we've got a real issue off the get-go. Well, I don't want to serve because, these people take advantage. I don't want to serve because they'll walk all over me. We got to understand this. This is a great quote in this book. It says, we must understand the difference between choosing to serve and choosing to be a servant. I jumped off the page for me. I've chosen to serve a whole lot, but choosing to be a servant changes things. When you choose to serve, that means we're in charge. I decide when I'm going to serve, where I'm going to serve, and who I'm going to serve when I choose to serve. But when I choose to be a servant, I no longer have to worry about people taking advantage of me because I give up that worry to experience the freedom to serve wholeheartedly, regardless. It doesn't matter the outcome, I'm there to serve. It's one thing to act like a servant, but it's totally different to be one. Totally different. In all things, it is possible to master the mechanics of serving without experiencing discipline. That's where the Pharisees were. Pharisees and Sadducees were always like that. They go through all the mechanics. Hey, we're going to put up a good show, and we know all the rules, and we do all this. But to actually do it, they don't do it. So we could do all that. We could fake it till we make it, or we could actually be a servant. Because if you're faking it, it's really hard to keep it up. Jocko Willink said this too. I love this. This is a great quote right here. This is one I actually live by a lot of times. It says, "You will not always be motivated, therefore you must be disciplined." If we're going to wait for something to motivate us, to compel us to do something, we could be waiting forever. Our good intentions got us nowhere. But action through discipline will make it happen. If it's a large task, it's going to require a great sacrifice, but only for a moment. But small tasks require constant sacrifice. In his book, it labels out 7 services that we must discipline ourselves to master. These was pretty neat because I never looked at any of these as being services except for one. But I thought it was really good. So this first one is the service of guarding the reputation of others. I thought that was amazing. I never looked at it as being a service. It's also known as the service of charity. Titus 3:2 says it like this: "Speak evil of no one." This discipline comes first on this list because it's also the hardest to master. To discipline yourself to hold your tongue. Anybody here struggle with that? I know I'm not alone. Why ain't y'all raising your hands? I know you. I'm talking about you now. Now, it's one thing, to talk about people because it's hard for you to recognize it when you're doing it. You can put a stop to that, but when you're in a group of people that's talking about somebody or listening to somebody else, you can automatically start to hear that, and now you've got a decision you're going to make. Should I listen to it? Should I add to it? Or should I stop it? There's people in my life I will not allow anybody to talk about. I think that's the reason why I got saved. I can still lay hands on people, right? But I'm just going to tell you, I got people in my life, man, I protect with to no end. I would not let somebody talk about them. And there's some people I've let it slide. But learning that this is a service, and it would be a great disservice to them to allow that to happen, really crushed me inside because I cannot believe that I would engage in conversations about people, and I've allowed things to go on about people that I say I love. So for that, I ask for forgiveness. But I pray that y'all feel that same conviction, that we should always understand that gossip and slander are great disservices to those that we love, and it's also a disservice to our witness. Make sure to steer clear of people who don't get it. If they don't understand that, just steer clear of them in conversations. I say this with my guys quite a bit. I make a habit to no longer sit at the table where other people are trash talk, and then when I get up and leave, I'm the next subject they talk about. Don't sit with those people. They're not good for you. The next service is called the service of being served. This was a tough one too, especially if you're a giver. This is really tough to be served. It's just like receiving a gift. If you're a giver, it's really hard to receive a gift. When Jesus went to wash Peter's feet, Peter wouldn't allow it. The big thing in that story, what he really revealed, is Peter had a lack of humility and a swelling of pride. He looked at Jesus like he should be a lot more uppity up in that. Really what happened is Jesus' authority through humility messed up Peter's concept of authority. And what it showed is if Peter was the master, he wouldn't have been washing feet. And that's where we could be very guilty. If we don't humble ourselves and start to think and act and walk like Jesus, we get in the way and our pride will swell up and we won't do what we're supposed to do. We'll look at it as like we're above that. It's an act of submission and service to allow others to serve us. When we are submitted to such a service, we recognize kingdom authority, and that's how it is. Like even this morning, just a little joke, with Brother Brent. He helped me out with my slides, and we got done early, so I was like, let's go get some breakfast. So we go get breakfast, and he goes, I'll pay for it. I was like, no, I'm paying for it. And he goes, no, I'll pay for it. And I was like, don't rob me of my blessing. I'm paying for it. You rescued me. You know what I'm saying? And then he's like, well, you don't have to pay for my service. No, but you don't have to rob me of mine. You know, if we're going to argue over something good. You know what I'm saying? But the thing was, I was just trying to show him how much I appreciate it. And then what I was dealing with was two people that were givers and didn't know how to receive. You know, so if you're going to argue over something good. Just go until somebody just says, hey, I'll take both of your cards, and we'll just swipe them both. So, next one is the service of common courtesy. We shouldn't even have to talk about this. But the problem is, common courtesy ain't so common no more. Common courtesy should be common, but in our culture and in today's world, it's terrible. How about just the common courtesy? This is one thing I like about our after service team. They do it so well. How about just a smile? That's huge. That's a common courtesy. How about saying hello? The worst thing you could say in America now is how are you? Because nobody means it. Nobody means it. How are you became the new hello. We'll say how are you in a moment we're passing by knowing we ain't got time to hear the answer. Just say hello. You know what I'm saying? You know it doesn't mean anything because you're not even giving any time for the response. So how about this? How about thank you? Thank you is huge. I hate going through a drive-up window and nobody says thank you. I'm like, I'm keeping you employed. Say thank you. I shouldn't have to say thank you for my food every time if you're just like, here. You know what I'm saying? How about please? Please goes a long way. Sounds simple, doesn't it? I'm teaching this because there's a lack of manners, and the lack of manners means common courtesy is becoming more and more rare. It's true. It's true. Here's a good one. This is my favorite one. You want to see this slide right here. How about this? This is a great common courtesy. RSVP. How about answer, respond, acknowledge. When you're invited to a group, a small group, a men's group, an event, respond. Respond, that's huge. I'm saying that, men. I'm saying that because we get no response. That's a common courtesy that should be happening. You know, especially if you're like, hey, we're doing this, and we're providing this, and what will you bring? And you get nothing. You get nothing back. All right, so we're doing this, and we need you to bring this. Are you going to bring this? And you get nothing back. So I'm like, thankfully, we're not asking them to bring the main dish. We'd all starve. So, Pastor used to tell us when we first started small groups, I'll never forget this. This is a side note, too. He said, if you know a person's always going to be late or not going to show up, do not put them in charge of bringing the plates, the forks, the napkins, and the cups. Because then you got nothing to eat on. You got all the food. So that was so good. Anyway, if you do these four things, what that really does is you affirm the person that invited you. You affirm their value in their life. You're saying, hey, I care enough about you that you care enough about me. That's all it is. Don't devalue people by brushing them off. The next service is one of my favorite, the service of hospitality. The reason why I like this is because this servanthood is normally one that takes place in your home. In your home. I love having people over at our house. We built our house specifically for that, to be able to have people over. I love it. Being able to be observant and creating an environment that's comfortable and welcoming. You know, it doesn't matter if you live in a cardboard box. Make it the best cardboard box you can. Make sure your door is open and inviting to others to come. People don't care about your stuff. They don't care what it looks like. Make it welcoming. It's your attitude and your heart towards them that's more important than your home. That's not in my notes either. Anyway, sharing what God has blessed you with for short periods of time is really, really good. Really good. You know, not so long ago, they used to have, a lot of homes had what was called a guest house. You don't see that no more unless you're rich. You know, because that guest house costs a lot of money now. But they used to have guest house. And then, not too long after that, we started shrinking the guest home, and we started doing guest rooms. Guest rooms is pretty good. And now we got one that's just called the spare room. And that's because it's only if the kids come back. But most hospitality now has been reduced to maybe just saying, hey, I'll pay for you a hotel. Being hospitable has really been in a major decline. You know, the thing is, the Bible says we're supposed to open our homes to people. And it's not happening. Matthew 25, 35 through 36 says this, for I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in your home. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you cared for me, and I was in prison and you visited me. Now in 37 through 39, of course, that's when they replied to the Lord, and they're like, when did we do all these things, Lord? I didn't see you there. I didn't see you there. That's what I like about the next one. Matthew 25:40 says this, when you did all those things to one of the least of these brothers and sisters, you did those to me. That's really what happens is when we do hospitality, it's a big deal in God's eyes because you're not just doing it to the people, you're doing it to him. It's our attitude that really serves him. So how do we serve God? We serve him by serving others. And that should be an eye-opener because if we treat them terribly, we're treating God terribly. That's his response. If you fed them, you fed me. So if you treated them like crap, guess what you did? Treat God like that. I don't want to be guilty of that. Next one right here, the service of listening. We're going to go ahead and skip that one. Right, man? Service of listening. Just as our love began by listening to the word of God, our first service to others should be listening to the words they speak. And it is difficult at times because we get in the habit of hearing, but not in the habit of listening. That is a complete discipline to be able to do that. I could hear stuff all day, and if somebody asks me about it, I could repeat the last few words or even a snippet of it. But when they ask me a specific question in there, I'm lost. I'm lost. In order to be a good listener, we must acquire compassion and patience for others. That's the two things I lacked when it come to becoming a good listener. If I don't have the patience to listen to them or the compassion for their need, I won't listen. That should be the eye-opener for all of us. You got to have those two things in order to be able to listen to a deep conversation and gain something from it. Me and my wife, we've had these talks before, and I just had to tell her sometimes, say, hey, I just want you to know, a lot of those things that are important to you are not important to me. Because I know that a lot of things that are important to me are not important to her. So when she's talking about something that's very specifically important to her, I have to focus and listen or I won't get it. And then it looks like I have no compassion or patience for her. These things are actually something that we have to practice, and you don't always get it right. Because listening doesn't always require an answer. And as a man, being a fixer, that's what I'm looking for. Where do I need to respond? But that's not always the case. In fact, if you're listening to respond, you're really not listening at all. That was an eye-opener to me last year, and I'm still practicing it. When you discipline yourself to listen to others, you open up the quietness in your mind to listen to God. I read that in that book. I was like, uh-oh. So now I got to listen to more people so I can hear what God's saying. The next service is the service of bearing one another's burdens. This one's huge. Galatians 6:2 says this, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill all the law of Christ. If we truly care for one another, we'll learn to bear another's burdens. Simply put, we're a body. So if one part of our body hurts, we should all hurt. If we allow our compassion to rise up enough to be strong for others in their hurts, we'll have no problem celebrating them in their victories. It's a lot of times what we find out. We got compassion for them when they're hurting, but we're jealous if they're celebrated. We can't be like that. And the last one here is the service of sharing the word of life with one another. Of course, you know the word of life is the word of God. And why is that important? We can read the Bible all day long. We're going to get a lot from it. But we're also dependent upon one another to receive the full counsel of God. Because what I'm reading today, you might be reading the same thing. We'll get something totally different from it. So I might get what I need today, but you might tell me something I need tomorrow from the exact same scripture I've never seen. The revelation that comes to us is not new. It's only new to us. But if you got something that's new to you and you know I need to have it, I need you to share it to me or else I won't know it. It's simple as that. Because anybody can share the gospel and we could all benefit from it. We all can. James 3:10 says this, from the same mouth comes blessing and cursings. Make sure what comes out of your mouth is a message that's from God and from the Word of God. Speak life so that they may seek the one that gives it. That's huge right there. If you're going to speak life, make sure it always points back to the one that gives it. Jesus set the standard by leading and serving. So if you want a title, you got to learn to grab a towel. If you want recognition, grab a towel. If you need to deflate your ego and your pride or even your arrogance, grab a towel. Because at the end of the day, a towel, a willing servant, and a clean heart is the only answer to this dying world. And that's the truth. If we don't learn to be servants and learn to serve one another with an open and willing heart, with a pure heart, this world's just dying and we're just sitting there letting it happen.
Thank you for being with us online. Our desire is to journey with you however you want to connect with us. We look forward to doing life with you. Now, let's go this week and be the church in our community as we focus on loving God and loving others. See you next week.